Hey y'all, welcome back to the Takeoff. I'm your host, Max Henry. Good to be here with you. And today we have Robbie Corbett, the co-owner of WFPF. He is the leader of their competition circuit. He helped put together their parkour coaching certifications, and he has a really, really fascinating history in the parkour community and stunts that I'm excited to get to share with you today. So Robbie had reached out a little bit ago and was wondering if he could hop on the Takeoff, and I thought it was going to be a great opportunity to put a face to one of the names behind WFPF, particularly with their USA Parkour Cup that's coming up in March, and get to hear a little bit of Robbie's background in parkour, how he got into the sport, and what he thinks the role of WFPF is in parkour community and culture, with where things are at right now. So we talk a lot about Robbie's background, how that informed his role with WFPF, and how he's kind of helped shape and guide the direction that WFPF has taken regarding competitions and insurance and coaching. And we go into the upcoming competition that they have, what he's excited about, what he's looking forward to, along with several other things. And this was a really great conversation for me. It was good to reconnect with Robbie after, not talking a ton for the last couple of years. And for those of you who don't know, I was an athlete with the WFPF from 2010 to 2016. So I got to know a lot of these people really, really well. And even though I have some points of not disagreement, but I'd say points of difference with what I maybe value or think of in parkour and how the culture, maybe my ideal version of the culture would be, I really think the passion that Robbie has for parkour comes through in this episode. And I am excited for you guys to get the chance to hear him talk about that in his own words and hear his story. And again, get to put a face to that name. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. Here's Robbie Corbett. Robbie Corbett, welcome to the Takeoff.
What's
Thanks
up?
for joining me. Attempt number 2.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. Ready to take off with you, I guess. Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, I have known you for, like many of the people on here, I've known you for a long time. I guess the listener may or may not be aware that I was a WFPF athlete, I think from 2010. Yeah,
Oh, wow.
2010 to like 2015, 16. And I have a lot of really, really good memories with all of the craziness that was happening behind the scenes with WFPF, from meeting people like Oleg and Phil and a lot of the British
Yeah.
guys, to later like getting in on the first comp. And we're going to talk about the USA Parkour Cup a little bit later, since I got to go to one of the first iterations of that. And it was such a fun experience. One thing I wanted to kind of start with is, people may not necessarily be familiar with you, especially if they're not in the sort of like WFPF competitive space or at one of the gyms that tends to host a lot of events. So would you mind going through how you got into parkour, all of that jazz for our listener?
Sure, yeah. I'll freestyle it just like in jazz, I guess, because
It's
yeah, I'm trying to think of the
full
bullet points.
improv.
So yeah. So let me think. Growing up, I was always just active. I grew up in a small town in Florida, where either like I knew you or you knew me, like, or we had a mutual friend. Um,
Quick
and
question.
the first,
How many
yeah.
alligators were like to resident? What was the alligator to resident ratio in your Florida town?
Uh, it's a it's a lot because we were right in between the swamp and the Indian River, and that's like the only place, one of the only places on Earth, I think, where the alligators were able to like come
Do a
from such
fresh
a
to
deep
salt.
swamp to a river. Yeah, yeah, because that's like one of the only ones that connects. But yeah, I used to go alligator hunting and all kinds of stuff like before cell phones and before like not knowing what to do. Just had friends that show up at my house and be like, "You want to go catch alligators?" I'm like, "Let's do it." And
The
yeah, we'd
first
get in the
obligatory
canoe.
Florida man question gotta ask is about the
Yeah,
alligator.
when I tell my wife some story, she's like, "I can't believe you're alive." And number one, are you like lying? Like that sounds too crazy. And then, once I say no, like that was just like, somebody presented that experience to me and I just said, "Yeah, let's do it." And went along, you know. And then two, yeah, it's like, "How are you still alive?" And I'm like, I like to believe there's a God and I like to believe he protected me, I guess, because there's nothing, or I'm the luckiest man on earth,
I
because there's
remember
no
hiking
reason
in
it
Big
should be.
Cypress It's crazy. People that have never been to full, like never been hiking in Florida in the swamp.
Yeah.
I did some solo hiking in Big Cypress, and you're walking on trails that are like 6 to 8 feet wide, and there's just
Mhm.
alligators on the trail. And your option
Mhm.
is either to go in the swamp where you know that there are more gators, or to
Yeah.
just walk like 5 or 6 feet next to the biggest one that I saw was probably about 10 feet long, like nose to end of tail, which isn't huge, but it's freaking big.
It's
And
pretty
you
big,
know that they're
you
lazy
know.
and that you're like, okay,
You hope.
they're
You
probably
hope they're
not
not
going to do
hungry.
anything. Exactly. But yeah, when you're walking past by yourself in the swamp, you're like, okay, this really feels like Jurassic Park right now. And I had not realized until I did go hiking in Florida that actually is fully a thing. So that's completely off the back to your
Yeah.
parkour story before we get into alligator crocodile Dundee
Yeah, yeah,
territory.
we could just do one on alligators and just random stories I have from my like teens. But yeah, so just growing up in a small town, and we would just, I also then just had a friend who was like, "Yo, I found a hotel that has a pool really close to it." I'm like, "Cool, what's that about?" He's like, "Well, did you see Jackass?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, the MTV show." He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "He jumped off that hotel into a pool." I go, "Yeah." And he's like, "You want to go do it?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, let's go do it." Because at the time, like, we didn't have diving boards, we didn't have there wasn't like cliffs or anything like that. So when my friend was like, "You want to go do it?" I'm like, "All right." So like we got there, and it was like the perfect setup of like, what floor do you want to do? And here's the pool. And like we just kind of, walked in, eyeballed it. We're like, "All right, pick your floor." And we started at the fourth, did it, ran away. The next day we are like, nobody said anything. Let's go back. Let's do the fifth. And we worked our way up to the eighth. And then eventually somebody found a bridge. They're like, "Yo, I found this bridge we could jump off." And I'm like, "How do we know it's deep enough?" He goes, "No, no, it's like man-made. It's deep enough." And for some reason in my head, I just go, "Oh, that makes sense."
Checks out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was enough of an answer for my brain at the time to be like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. A man dug it. It must be deeper than nature." So yeah, we did that, and it turned into like we were jumping off the bridge, and then it was flipping off the bridge, and then it was like, "Yo, my friend has a car with a roof rack. What if he drives and I jump off it?" So it just kind of turned into that. And then I remember one day I was with a friend who had a Jeep, and we were telling the story to like the two girls in the back. And you were like, "We're coming up on this bridge that we used to jump off and blah, blah, blah." They're like, "No way. No way." I go, "Yeah, I jumped off my friend's car." They're like, "No way." And I just look at my friend Kane at the time, and I go, pull close when we get there. He's like, "Yeah." And I like take out my phone, and like we're sitting there talking. He's got his Jeep, and all of a sudden he pulls up to like the bridge, just keeps rolling. I just get up on the bars and just, jump out to the water. And we would just do what I guess is crazy stuff. But like I never drank, I never did drugs. I was like straight edge Christian, kind of growing up. So that's how, I guess, what we would do to get like the adrenaline or things like that. And then my first passion sport was skateboarding. My two older brothers were into it, so I was into it, and that was like pre X Games. So I was around when that came around. I was there when Tony Hawk Pro Skater came around, and then we like went to the town hall and fought to get a skate park built in our town, which came later, when I was like in high school. Um, and then I was always just, yeah, I remember like where I was at my, step family's house when we were watching TV, and the trailer for Rumble in the Bronx came on. And I watched Jackie Chan jump over like from a roof to like another building. And I just like as a kid, like just remember watching that and being like, "What?" And then my uncle, was just like we both looked at each other, and he goes, "Did that guy just fly?" And I'm like, "I think so." Like that was that for like that's always stuck in my head, is like not necessarily I want to do that, but just like, wow, that's possible.
Yeah.
Um and then yeah, like I said, then Jackass came around, so me and my friends would kind of do it, but like not get hurt. We would just do it to like impress, girls or people, but we would do it in a way like, I've never broke a bone still to this day. So like we would do it, I guess, a bit more calculated, and we would like sell it, like I also grew up watching some pro wrestling. So I knew how to like kind of sell like an injury,
Hmm.
but not be hurt. So yeah, what then in high school I got into wrestling, so I was getting slammed under the will of other people. And at the same time I got a trampoline in my backyard, so I was like teaching myself how to flip and teaching myself how to like fall or get slammed. So eventually it kind of culminated to Senior year, I didn't want to do wrestling anymore. And the cheerleaders, I was all friends with them. And they were like, you can flip and stuff. You should just be our male cheerleader. Just pick us up and do some flips and be the first male cheerleader. And for some reason, I was like, yeah, that sounds fun. So I did that my senior year. And they kind of taught me how to flip their way. I was self-taught and they had some tech, I
Mm-hmm.
would say. I say in quotes now, but you can see how gullible I was
There's
back
a
then. They were
cheer
like, just,
aesthetic. Yeah.
yeah, they're like, just look at the ceiling there, jump as high as you can, and at the top, do your flip. And I was like, okay. And like, luckily it worked. I would never teach a beginner that now. But like that, like I said, I just had a trampoline in my backyard and was just self-taught it stuff. So it's not like I had no ability to flip, but
Mm-hmm.
like I was not, yeah, I wouldn't teach now how I learned. So then I did the cheer thing, and at that time I met this guy named Kane Sinclair, and he was in band. So I just went and like after one football game, I found all the pole vaulting pads were hidden behind the visitor section. And so there was like a band event and a choir event, and I was in the choir at the time. So I just like got my choir friends together. I go, yo, let's after tonight's event, I got a plan. Meet me at the football field. And they're all like, what? Okay. And then I went and found this dude Kane that I kind of knew, but he could really flip. I was like, that dude's cool. He can really do what I want to do. So I went and found him. I go, yo, after the concert, come meet me out by the football field. And I could tell he looked at me at first like, is that like a fight? Like, what is that? And I go, it'll be cool. You'll dig it. He's like, all right. So we all met. I went, showed him behind the stadium. There was all these pole vaulting mats, and they were like, what? So we just spent like the next, I think like 6 hours, almost till the sun went down, just jumping off the like portable building that's back there for the away team football team, and eventually making our way up to this, pulling them out more, going up the stadium, flipping off. And that turned into me meeting this dude, Kane, who, we've become lifelong friends since. And he would teach me kind of how to flip. We would be doing parkour, but just didn't know what it was called. We'd always be playing tag with our friends. We'd play like manhunt, and me
Mm-hmm.
and
What
him would
year
never
was
get
this
tagged.
around?
This
Yeah.
would be 2003, because
Okay.
I would have,
Yeah.
yeah, I would have graduated 2004. Yeah. Um, so yeah, 2003, this was all happening. We would play manhunt, tag, whatever. Nobody get us. We'd also just go run from the cops for fun, just because we had a town with like that late curfew, and if you were out past 10, the police would want to just harass you. They'd just be like, "What are you doing?" and take you down. And me and Kane would just be like, "Why don't we just go out? If the cops come, we run." And like once again, I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." So it also, if it's not obvious by now, me and him really didn't have any parents around. Our parents had kind of left us by that point, so we had a lot of free time and not a lot of like smart
Supervision.
guidance. Yeah. So me
Fair.
and him never got
Yeah.
caught. We never got, nothing ever happened per se. But like when I look back, I'm like, Jesus, or like when I have a kid, I'm like, I can't let him do that stuff, you know. But I gotta be chill still. So anyway,
There's a balance. Yeah.
yeah. So then yeah, Kay went off to college. I stayed in town. And eventually, yeah, it was one night I was watching like UFC or something, like the best of on like Spike TV, and this trailer came on for this movie called District B13, and I was like, this is like Jackie Chan but even cooler. Like this is like, what is this? So I went to the nearest movie theater and they said it's only playing in Miami, which is like 3 hours away. I said, okay. So I called a friend and I go, yo, do you want to drive to Miami and watch a movie with me? And, one of my friends was like, sure. So we did. I remember we got into the theater, we sat down, and the movie started, and they start talking in French. And I'm like, oh, I guess we're watching a French film, you know? And then it was a really good movie. I was really surprised. And it was over, and I was like, that was awesome. What is that stuff? So went home and got on that friend's computer because I didn't own one, and we looked it up on IMDb. Who are these actors? And then we're like, wait, they're not really actors. This guy's the creator. And then it went down the rabbit hole of Sebastian Foucault. What is free running, since parkour is being put in this box? Is it a sport? Is it not a sport? Um, I think, and that was really the day I was like, wow, I'm a free runner. There's a name for this thing. Like that's it. Because I think before that, some people showed me a little bit of three run, but once
Hmm.
again, I didn't own a computer, and it was on like 3run K.O or
Yeah, it
something.
was pre-YouTube
And
and stuff, so it all would have been on
yeah,
3run.co.uk.
all of this was pre
Mm-hmm.
YouTube because I think then I got a job that had a computer that I was allowed to work at, and that's where I got on like Meta Cafe and saw like the clips of District B13 were there. Like, oh, there's the, just the
Mm-hmm.
scenes and stuff. So yeah, I think before I had a friend saw 3 Run and he's trying to Kane came back to visit and we were at a punk rock show and he's like trying to explain to me what a wall spin is, but I didn't know and he didn't know. He just only saw the video and he goes, "You
Yeah.
like do like a cartwheel on the wall." And I'm just looking at him like, "What? How do you do a cartwheel on a wall?" And he's like, "You like I can't do it, but like you go like this and then you go around." I'm like, "What?" I couldn't see it. And then he also goes, "A guy did a double Kong." And I just looked at him like, "How do you do a double Kong? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
What? What do you mean?" And it was one of those to where that night with the double Kong, actually, then there was when we were closing down the punk rock show, he got a table out, him and another friend, and they just put it like on the gym floor that we were at. And they're like, it kind of looks like this. And they like hit the table
Mm-hmm.
twice and did a Kong. And I go, "Oh." So like I did it after him. And I'm like, "Oh, that's a double Kong." Okay. So I guess I had a little bit of an understanding of it before, but we didn't know 3 Run was calling it parkour. We didn't know it was free running. We thought it was
Mm-hmm.
just like something else. So I guess that was like my first kind of like, introductions. And then I would say when I was 22, no, 21, Casino Royale came out. And I've been a
Mm-hmm.
big fan of James Bond my whole life. Like I still own every movie on VHS. And as a kid, I remember my first stepdad would be like, "You can't watch James Bond this much. It's not for kids." And to me, it was like the coolest character. Like I didn't get it. Like I didn't understand that he was
Mm-hmm.
like, sexist. I didn't care for drinking or smoking, which he did all the gambling. I didn't care about any of that. I just was like, he's a real dude. That's cool, compared to like a superhero.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm there watching the James Bond movie and it starts out with this fucking chase scene with and I knew who Sebastian Foucan was because I had read the free running thing, just a
Mm-hmm.
few months before. So I watched that and I go, okay, this is like my sign. I need to go be in Los Angeles and be in movies or whatever. That's where parkour is. That's where I want to be. So in 2008, I drove across to to do parkour in film and television and stuff like that. And coincidentally, the same year Kane had moved here, so we did it kind of together per
Mm-hmm.
se. We both found out
Yeah.
though once we moved here that all those movies were shot in the UK though, even James Bond. They don't shoot those in LA. So, but we were lucky because everybody here at the time was like parkour so cool, and all the stunt men were like, that's not what stunts is. That like we just hit the concrete on our back or our face. These guys are like flipping over roofs and tricks. So we found a good niche because, like I said, we started with the jackass stuff. So like we could do
Mm-hmm.
the stunts, but we could also do the parkour. So from there it was like music videos, television, um, small gig stuff like that, and then eventually ran into David Thompson, who was at the time I think he was the president of WFPF. I think he was at that point, and he told us there's going to be this MTV show, and he put us in for casting for it. We didn't get it because they were looking for more ethnic background since all the UK guys were already coming over, and Oleg was coming over, so they needed some
They had too
diversity.
many white boys.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Also, skill wise, no way. I would have been happily the worst person on that show. But yeah, they knew that there was, yeah. So, yeah, and that's what started then my, journey with WFPF. But yeah, before that, I was training like with Tempest. We went to the Apex. I think it was the second ever jam in America. It was definitely, I think, the second. It
Yeah,
wasn't
one of the
called
national
Apex yet.
jams.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was
Colorado
at
Parkour Nat Jam.
yeah, it was in Denver at the Fountain.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I met Justin Schaefer. Me and him, like within 2 hours of meeting Justin Schaefer, I'm like, this guy could be my best friend if whatever. And by like day 3, me and him were inseparable. It's where I met Ryan Ford. It's where I met Levi Muhlenberg. It's where I met Mark Turok. Um, no Soul, but Brian Orozco. It's
Mm-hmm.
back also when everybody had a nickname. So like you meet him and you're like,
Yep.
but what's your real name? You know, like I think someone introduced me to Levi as he was like Sky Native,
Sky
and I go,
Native. Yeah.
that's not it, is it? And he just kind of laughed. I go, that's not you. you could do better. And then yeah, he eventually moved here. We became great friends. Yeah, what Victor was Showtime Lopez. Like there was, I think like Ryan Ford was like Demon or something. Like I was
Yep.
like, kind of
Oh
that
yeah,
kind of
all
fits.
the forum days.
Um, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that's cool.
that was 2008. So I've been in the game for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, and the stunt pipeline makes a lot of sense. I knew some of the Florida stuff, but I don't think I knew how directly the
Yeah.
stunt pipeline was strong from like day one. I mean, I think about your story of jumping into the pool. It's really interesting because a lot of the
Yeah.
things that you say, like your reaction to Jackie Chan, I remember that feeling like watching. It was actually a Blaine video from the UK, but it was the first time I ever saw somebody do a rail
Really.
precision, and I remember just
Mm,
having that same kind of like light switch thing. Like I didn't actually think a
hmm.
human being could do something like that,
Yeah.
land on a
Yeah.
rail and just stay there. Like this inhuman display of skill. But I love the fact that your personality type, you were like, I'm gonna take that and then go and like do these swimming pool jumps and all this. And I was like, yeah, I'm gonna kind of scared of heights. I'm just gonna like dial it back and
Yeah.
maybe do some rail balance. But I resonate strongly with the nerdiness of that, especially back then. It was a exploratory time. So you
Yeah.
now are, is it co-owner, co-director? What's your position with WFPF right now?
Technically it is, yeah, a co-owner. But yeah, we had the president passed away a year ago, unexpectedly. That was David Thompson. So it's been a very challenging year to figure out, yeah, how the operations and business and things, because that was a person that was a co-founder,
Mm-hmm.
and had been doing so much stuff. And like I said, it was unexpected, so we weren't ready
Mm-hmm.
for it. But yeah, I've been a co-owner since I think 2017. Um, yeah, and before that, I
Yeah.
helped. Like I was on the MTV show as assistant stunt coordinator and a judge. So I would help on the pre-shooting days when the athletes would be making their videos as teams. I'd take one crew, Paul Darnell would take the other crew, and we'd make sure they were safe because a lot of them were only coming from the YouTube background, not this slightly more cinematic to where it's like an example is like I ran into Daniel Arroyo. I go, hey, you're supposed to show me a roof to go on. He's like, oh, I don't know how to get to it from the ground here. And I just go, no, no. And I just showed him my shoes, which were the Ariakis. I go, no, no, I'm here to go with you. And he's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
parkour's sick. And we just start jumping the roofs over at
Yeah.
Lacey's studio. And he
Yeah.
shows me this roof. And then I go talk to the DP, and he's like, yeah, we're going to shoot it like this and this and this. So then I go back, oh, yeah, we're going to put a mat on there. And I think it was Ryan
Mm-hmm.
Doyle goes, no, no, I don't want it. No mat, no mat. I go, yeah, you're going to put a mat because that guy's shooting down. He's not even going to see you're going to look like a shadow from a roof to
Yeah.
a roof. You're going to go to a mat. And he's like, well, I'm only thinking I'm doing it 3 times. I go, well, all 3 of those are going to a mat unless that cameraman comes up here. And I just said it in a nice way, but said it because that was my job to
Mm-hmm.
make sure they're safe. And I think he did 8 times to the mat, and then the camera guy came up there and he did one without the mat, and eventually he came up after and goes, "Yeah, good shout, good shout." I go, "Cool," And then there's another one like with somebody really wanted to do a wall flip on this one wall, and they're like, and then they gave him shitty shoes, and he's like, "I'm just slipping all over the place." And I was like, "No worries, I got it. It'll be prepped for you. Don't worry." And he's like, "How are you gonna do that?" I go, "Don't worry, don't worry." And all I did was go get the clear adhesive spray from my car and
Mm-hmm.
spray down the wall. And then right before he went, I sprayed down his shoe. And he was
Yeah.
like, and then he was doing, the 2-step wall full and like, this is sick. What is this? And I'm like, it's adhesive spray.
Yeah.
So I just already kind of had an idea of how to do things safely. Because a lot of stuff I'm telling you, it sounds insane, but like I would always do it incrementally. So even how I learned a wall flip was I just seen it, in a movie. And movies aren't like
Mm-hmm.
real. So you're also like wondering, is this, possible? So for me, it was I found a sand dune at the beach and I made a hole for my foot and just kind of practiced that. And then eventually I think I found a tree. And
Mm-hmm.
then eventually I saw a friend's like, I know a slanted wall 20 minutes from here. And I was like, you do? like get in the car, you know, like that's how silly we were. I was like 20-minute drive for a slanted wall that I've never seen one, you know,
It's the
this is
skate spot
perfect. And we
mentality
found it.
right there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I grew up skating, so yeah, rail prees weren't so scary for me because I was used to grinding a rail. Or I grew up in the. Do you remember the soap days? Do you remember soap
Oh
shoes?
yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I grew up with those in middle school. So when somebody's like jump into a rail, I was like, oh, I could do that, you know. But
Hmm.
once again, I was always a progression person, but my progression was very high for the average person, I would say. But I was never, in my opinion, out of control or reckless. Like to this day, I've still never broke a bone. I think last year was my first year having health insurance.
Hmm.
Even when I was in stunts, I didn't have health insurance and I never needed it. Um, I've never not been seriously injured. I've had incremental injuries now that I'm 40, you know, that have added up. But it's normally from like, you know, I rolled an ankle and just didn't rest well enough and eventually it became a chronic problem. But so like when some people are like, "Oh, you're insane." Some of those stories I'm like, "Yeah, that was insane." Like when the friend's knocking on the door at 10 p.m. You want to go hunt some gators with us? I have a canoe. I should, you know, that was dumb. But like parkour, I was always incrementally being like, you know, I'd look at somebody and be like, "Oh, that's how he did it. How could I do it?" And I would do
Hmm.
something similar and kind of find a way to work my way. So stunts was very
Yeah.
similar. Stunts was very similar. It was like, how do you get hit by a car? And I'd be like, I think I know how. You know, if the person is driving at this speed, you put the camera like that. I think, and I grew up watching movies because I didn't have a very good family life, so I'd always just be watching movies. So going into movies was I could see like I knew I had like a memory of being like, oh, I saw it in this one movie like this. So I think they shot it from inside the car, and then the hit was like he got hit, but then it cuts to inside the car and then it
Hmm.
cuts to like the ground and he rolls away. So I think if we just do it like that, and they were like, yeah, I'm like, yeah, I think so, you know.
Yeah.
So
What was your
yeah,
motivation for getting out? I don't want to say getting out of stunts. So I think, but kind of because you obviously have
yeah,
moved more and more into working with WFPF and on the sort of
yeah,
organizational and supervisory space. But we also
sure,
worked together, like for the American Eagle campaign that I
yes,
did. You were
yeah, that
the
was
stunt
sick. Yeah,
coordinator for that, which was a blast. And that's always interesting because, like you said, with the Ryan Doyle story, particularly back then, parkour athletes, like we were so there was such an ethos of like only do it if you can do it in any circumstance. But what a lot of
sure,
people didn't know in parkour is that yeah, maybe the DP doesn't like the shot and you end up doing it 30 times. And so sure you can
yeah,
do wall full or whatever, a cork off of a truck onto the grass and be fine two or three times, but if you don't know if it's going to be 3 or 30, you might as well throw a mat down and not have to worry about it. And I remember for
yeah.
me, that was a learning experience. And I'm sure, like as you just said, that was a learning experience for many other athletes. But what motivated you to move away from that space into working more directly with WFPF and out of the stunt industry?
Uh, yeah, it's a great question. So for me, the stunt industry was always a cool thing, but it was the most stressful thing. It was a very stressful tribal kind of life to where while you're on a job and the job is you're probably doing the scariest thing you've ever done in your life, you know that job is ending within a few days and you need to get another one. That like so while you're there, like to give you an idea, I did a Sour Patch Kids. Kane came up to me, you know, when I just moved here for a few months, and he goes, uh, I have this opportunity, but I can't do it. It's non-union. And at the time I wasn't in the
Mm-hmm.
union yet. I was supposed to be, but I kept getting burned. Like promises, hey, come
Mm-hmm.
do this movie, we'll get you in the union. Wasn't and I it wasn't happening. He goes, but this was like a sign. He goes, you could there's a Sour Patch Kids commercial. I can't do it. You look like me. I'll tell the guy. You could do it. And I said, cool, what is it? And he goes, you know Wild E. Coyote? I go, like the Roadrunner? He goes, yeah. He goes, you're gonna do that into a wall on the bike. And I'm like, wait, I'm gonna be the coyote? He goes, yeah. I go, And I just right away was like, okay. And I just said yes. But in my mind, I'm like, you said you want to be a stuntman. That sounds like the gnarliest fucking thing like I could ever think of. And it's like, before that, all my stunt stuff was just us playing at a park and like showing off for, auditions and not getting them, but like slamming ourselves on the grass or something. But I was like, all right. So I just said yes. The coordinator, reaches out and goes, yeah, you're the guy. Come audition. I auditioned. They're like, we love you, but we'll get an actor. And I said, okay. They go, but you'll be the stunt dude. I said, all right. I remember just driving there that day and being like, I'm really gonna go ride a bike full speed into a fucking wall. Like this is wild. Like I drove across the country for this, and this is pretty wild that like this is what's given to me, you know. So we get there. They only have 2 bikes, and the third one will be built from the 2 bikes. I'm like, this is this is my
these
first time on a
bicycles or
big commercial.
motorcycles?
Bicycles. This is my
Okay,
first
cool.
commercial, and I heard commercials have these huge budgets. I heard it's for Sour
Yeah.
Patch Kids. I hear this huge. They literally just built a wall out of wood in the middle of the road, like going down a hill, like some in the middle of nowhere. And then this guy doesn't even have the budget for 3 bikes. And I'm like, and they're the shittiest bikes I've ever seen. Like the handlebars, like go this way, so you really are like juggernutting your head. I'm like, son of a bitch. And the tires are so thin to where at first I'm like, maybe there'll be a thick tire and it won't break. I go there, it's like the thinnest tire I've ever seen in my life. I'm like, holy shit. So anyways, they're like, yeah, they're all stoked. This is the guy that's going to ride the bike into the wall. And I remember they bring up all the producers and they're like, meet him. He's so great. And I remember one of the producers is like, so you've done this before, right? And I just go, no, ride a bike into a wall? Are you serious? And you could tell they were like thrown off at first. I go, but in my mind, I'm like, what? Who, like, that's what
Who
you
has
actually
done
wanted
this?
is some
Yeah.
guy who's just riding bikes into walls. Like, it was that, moronic. But I read the room real fast and I'm like, oh shit, they're nervous. So I go, no, but I've rode bikes my whole life growing up and like ramped them and stuff like that. This, I'm just gonna, as I go into the wall, I'm gonna try to pump the front brake so it kicks up the back tire. Hopefully that throws my back into the wall. And then when I come down, I'll see if I'm falling on the bike or not. And they were just like, oh, that sounds great. And then they all just went away. And I was like, all right. And then sure enough, yeah, they're all pumped, which this is what's crazy about stunts. They're all like hyped for me to ride a bike into the wall. Everybody. And I'm like, okay, this is nobody's asking me about safety. Nobody's concerned. They're all like, he's gonna do it. Let's do that first. That sounds awesome. And I'm
Definitely
like,
not a SAG job. Yeah.
I'm like, what the fuck? So I'm like, man, this is crazy. Okay. Like, they give me the bike. I go up the hill. They call action. I start to ride it, and I say, I'm not gonna make it. So I just stop, which you're not supposed to do. I've heard from like Victor Lopez and Gabe and Diddy, the Tempest guys before. Like when they say action, you do the whole thing. You don't stop no matter what. And I was like, okay, but so I broke the rule because I'm like, this is just not going to be good. So I stop, and they're all like yelling at me, like, why'd you stop? Why did I go? I gotta go further up the hill. These bikes are pieces of shit. And everybody just started laughing, and I was like, okay, cool. I had to ride further up this hill and just start bombing it because these things just suck. And I'm like, gosh, yeah, like, oh man. So I'm bombing it. I just hit the wall, break the bike. Everybody's stoked. I like throw up a thumbs up, and they're like, let's do it again. Do it a second time, break that bike. They're like, we better shoot the commercial, huh? I'm like, yeah. They then spend 12 hours shooting the commercial. And somebody comes and finds me. They're like, hurry, the sun's going down. We want to go again. I'm like, all right. I just hop on the bike. I go, I break it. And that was the commercial. And I was like, okay, I guess I am good at this stunt thing. Because that was the most terrifying thing I thought, I was ever going to do. And I actually felt a little sore here. And just from the first one, because once again, a good quote somebody later told me, some things have to be felt through, not thought out. And I heard this like theory from a stunt friend. If you pump the front brake, that would be best, blah, blah. False. You want to be as loose as humanly possible and just let the bike hit the wall and just let it throw you into the wall as hard as possible. Because when you hit the wall, you stay. If the bike then falls, you can ride the wall down and you're not like, when I did this, I went and then flew away and I had all this tension. So I felt that for like the next 3 days. And that was also a good thing of being like, just because somebody sounds like it's good advice, maybe don't, just believe it.
Yeah.
Sometimes less is more. So anyways, that was my first job. And I go, this is cool. I'm good at it. But then as it kept going, I realized those jobs are really hard to come across. You have to be a really good salesman of yourself. You
Mm-hmm.
have to be friends with any stunt guy you ever meet, even if you're not really friends with them, just because you're hoping they'll get you work. You're always being thought of the least on a film set.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody cares about the stunt guy. You're supposed to play the role, which is you're there, you're bulletproof, you're invincible, you don't get afraid, while at the same time they don't want to hear your advice about like safetying it. So a lot of people I rubbed the wrong way because I went pretty quick to coordinating.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people that just knew me in 2008 and 9 didn't think I did the right way of going to coordinating. And in my uh,
In my
opinion,
experience with stunts, the coordinator is sort of like the retirement position for the stunt. Or I think
yes,
that's how I feel like a lot of my stunt friends not have articulated it, but it's kind of like you pay your dues as a stunt actor for however
sure.
long it takes, and then when your body can't handle it. This is maybe for the listener who's not as familiar with the industry, but I could see why if you're going in 3 years to this position that other people are like, I waited 15 years before I tried to be a coordinator, that
Yeah.
could be frustrating to some. But
Yeah. And
kudos.
just so we're
Heck yeah.
clear, I would never do a job I honestly didn't think I could
Mm-hmm.
do. And for me, a lot of the coordinators I worked with weren't looking out for my safety in any way. They
Mm-hmm.
were just like, "We got you. You're a body. We're just gonna throw you." And I'm like you didn't like last night. You weren't thinking about, hey, how do we do this strategically so this guy isn't limping his whole life potentially, or
Mm-hmm.
like you like not to throw anybody in the bus, but in the Sour Patch Kids commercial, it's like, wait, you didn't like you
Yeah.
didn't
Do
he
any
didn't throw
vetting.
out, hey, let's do like a half speed practice, or hey, I brought you some practice bikes just in case, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And I just
Let's
looked at
mat
it
the
a different
wall somehow.
I looked at
Mm-hmm.
it a different way because I also at that time I had been teaching. Before that I was a personal trainer with fitness, and then I was teaching gymnastics at a certain point because that was the closest thing to parkour. So that I went with that perspective of like, okay, this person's coming to me wanting to learn a backflip. Let
Mm-hmm.
me go blah 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 and see if they can. And also, if they can't, let me build something that gets them to it.
Mm-hmm.
I would just always be trying to have people not get hurt. Like I said, I grew up with the jackass to where it's like, or pro wrestling. Those guys go 300 days a year performing their wrestling. And I know people are
Mm-hmm.
like, it's a very tough thing, which it is, but still they are the last people that want to get injured because now they're not working anymore. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So I would always say that to people. They're like, be safe, you don't get hurt. And I go, nobody wants Robbie to not get hurt any more than Robbie. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and then I would be the same with the participants. Like I said, right away with, like Ryan Doyle and people, it's like, I respect you and I respect you enough to tell you you're going to a mat because there's no reason for
Mm-hmm.
you to get injured for this. And it
Mm-hmm.
would, the shot's still going to be great. You're going to be great, and I would just see stuff like that. I didn't have that, um, say, like you see it in fighting now too, or you see it in parkour. Like I would always be like, okay, how can I do this and not get hurt? Not just can I do it? Like,
Mm-hmm.
could I go jump manpower right now at 40? Probably. But if I was there, I would still be thinking, what progression can I do first to make sure I'm not going to get hurt doing it? Because in my
Mm-hmm.
mind, as soon as you get hurt, you didn't really do it. You injured yourself. Like that's why nobody
Yeah.
else does it, is because they don't want to get injured. Can you do it and not get injured? So that's how
Yeah.
I
I
always
want to
looked
pull
at
on
it, and
that.
that's how I
Yeah.
got further to a degree in the stunt world, but also not at the same time. Because a
Yeah. I
lot
was
of
gonna
people,
say,
like
can
I
I pull on
said,
that
look the
thread?
wrong way at it. Yeah, but yeah, go for it, Terry.
Yeah. So because that feels to me like a really clear through line to where, at least from my perspective, what I saw you doing next in our relationship and our and my experiences was like we did. I don't know if it was the first certification, the first
Not the
WFPF
first, no.
cert, or one of the firsts, probably that first year or so at 5 star together, which you'd put together, and then we also did again. I don't know if it was the first or the second USA Parkour Comp in Vegas, But do
That
you
was the
feel
jump off.
like
Yeah, that was the
the
international. Yeah.
jump off? Yeah. So do you feel like the sort of, because it seems like stunts taught you, maybe gave you a different perspective on how to take care of other people. Do you feel like that was motivating for you in both the development of the cert and then in the competition?
What 100%. So for me, it was always at that time, I'd have to people like, what's parkour? I'd have to say like James Bond.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'd have to, people would be like, oh, so it's like gymnastics. And I wanted to shoot that shit down right away. As a person who learned a lot from teaching gymnastics, I first learned it all without gymnastics for the most part. And then certain things, gymnastics was like, oh, here's how we, break down your cartwheel to make you have a better round off. And when they
Mm-hmm.
showed me that, all of a sudden now I could double twist, where before I couldn't do more than a single. And I was like, oh, my round off was the reason I couldn't do XYZ. So then stunts, I knew how to fall on my back, my face, my sides. So then teaching myself how to flip, like my first time seeing that at Webster, I go, oh, I'm just going to do that to my back first. And I just
Mm-hmm.
threw it and just bam onto my back on the spring floor. And people are like, what the fuck? And I go, well, I'm just going to do that for you to feel the kick. And in their mind, that was crazy. But like I said, because I knew how to do that. And then also, like I said, from growing up with a trampoline in my backyard, I was terrified to do a backflip. I knew two people that could do one, and they didn't know how to teach me. So I
Mm-hmm.
would just stomach drop a lot. I would just backdrop a lot. I would like backdrop, and then I, roll, flipped over from my back to my
Mm-hmm.
back. Like, and all these things I never seen anybody do, but I was just so determined to do a backflip. It took me, like I said, like 2 years, till the day somebody finally gave me the right information of just go as high as you can, get mad, and look to the sky. And before that, I'd always look over my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So I just did it, and I whoop, and I just looked, and I was like, oh man, I see the trampoline, and I'm still 10 feet high. And then I landed on my feet. I started screaming, and I like ran, like this energy came out. Like I could still remember it to this day of like, I'm nowhere near the trampoline and I did a backflip. Like I'm still in the air. This is crazy. I think I was like in middle school for that one. So I've always seen things that I want to do, but like I had a good grasp of like, I don't know how to do that. What could I try first?
Mm-hmm.
And the big thing I saw once I came around parkour was people didn't have that. They were like, I saw a guy do a Kong. I'm going to throw a Kong tonight at the gym. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, I'm really scared. And I'd just be like, well, why don't you do some speed vaults first? And they're like, well, I can do a speed vault. I go, yeah, why don't you do it? But just like not go so sideways, just kind of go head
Mm-hmm.
front a little more. And they're like, what? And I go, why don't you do that? And they did. And then I go, why don't you do it on the other arm? Like, well, I can't speed vault to my other arm. I go, well, why don't you learn that first? And they like, we're doing speed. And then they were going a little more straight. I go, now just do the speed, but touch both hands.
Mm-hmm.
And they did. And then eventually became a Kong, and like, I didn't know any of that. It was just, once again, it's like, I was myself wanted to do things that I thought were impossible. And then I'd find a way to humanize it, or find a neutral. So I always kind of had that. I don't know where that came from, per se. So then when parkour was coming around, is that same thing. The MTV show was over. A lot of people considered it a fail because it only went half the season. I didn't, because I had been in the film industry at that point for 3 years, and I can't even tell you how many things I was told were gonna come out that never came out ever. Let alone got,
This is a good
you
time to
know,
say for anyone who's listening, if you've not watched actually, I don't know if there's still anywhere to watch it. I'm sure there's somewhere.
Amazon. You can
It
buy it on
is,
Amazon. Yeah, it's like $1
it
per
is
episode.
worth, okay, it's totally worth a rewatch. And I rewatched it a couple years ago. The community was so hyper focused on not being cringy at the time that we shot ourselves in the foot because we were so young. I mean, it was like a community of mostly really self-conscious 16 to like 22-year-olds who
Yeah,
also were doing a sport that had this like very rigorous ethical code of practice in a lot of
I don't think it
communities,
did.
and like it was
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
not a good combination to make a reality TV show. I'm really sad because now in hindsight I watch it and I'm like, oh, this actually was so cool, and it really wasn't embraced by the parkour community because it wasn't
Hmm.
quote unquote true parkour to the extent that maybe some folks wanted to watch it. But yeah, anyway, for the listener, I would go back and watch it. Like the castle episode, I love to this day. I think like
Yeah,
the mall
that
episode's
was a
so
great one.
good. I think the castle was my favorite. And yeah, so cool to just see all of those athletes like Oleg, Daniel Ibaka, Ben Jenks, Daniel Arroyo, tons and tons of awesome athletes in a totally out there situation. I wanted to throw that out because I'm sure that was 2010. There's probably some folks listening who are started parkour after that, maybe have never even heard of MTV's Ultimate Parkour Challenge. So they can go watch it with a totally open mind and just enjoy it as a hilarious parkour spectacle that had some really, really cool movement and sets.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was one of those. I heard about it and I said that could be cool, and that's what I've said with
Mm-hmm.
most things. Because right away, the big thing that also once again resonated with me was what Sebastian Foucault said about everybody trying to put parkour him in a box with parkour, and he kept saying, "I'm one of the founders. You don't tell me what parkour means to me, and you
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be trying to keep this rocket grounded. You stop trying to put it in this box. Stop trying to say parkour isn't this,
Mm-hmm.
and saying it's only this." And that resonated the most with me because by the time I read that, I had already, the reason I was running up walls was to get up onto them and flip off of them. So then when people are
Mm-hmm.
trying to tell me flips aren't part of it, I'm like, have you ever done a flip? And they'd be like, no. I'm like, I think if you did a flip, you would be, yeah, you would think differently about this. And then I felt the
Mm-hmm.
most of that was based off of a personal fear that all these, in my opinion, big fishes wanted to keep the pond small so they could still be big fishes. And I think that's
Yeah.
shown more truth to a lot of those people. If you go back to those ones who were really trying to make it this tribal, animalistic, basic principle, I think if you look where they were, a lot of them now are doing all those things. So like those people then, like the reason our certification, just so you know, was started, number one, to go to that real fast, the MTV
Mm-hmm.
show I looked at as a huge success. So I'm going to the rap party with like Tim Sheaf and Ben Jenkins. We're listening to the new Eminem album. It's like, man, this is a great night. This is so sick. We're going to a rap party. And I'm thinking this is awesome. Not perfect, but awesome. And I go there, it's over. I notice Dave and Vic are standing, alone finally. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go tell them, what a great job it was working for them. And hope we can do something in the future, which is just what you do as a stuntman always. Because once again, you're on a job, terrified, but you're like, I need another job. This job's going
Yeah.
to end. You always are thinking that. So I did that. I went up and I said, hey, it's great working with you guys. If you're ever doing anything in the future, I'd love to hear about it and see if I could be a part of it. I didn't know they were like distraught at that. That whole rap party to them was like a failure. They thought we were going like 4 seasons,
Mm-hmm.
which is fine. I just am a little bit more number one of a realist, but I also wasn't, like that has been my experience is like that's
Yeah.
like insane. So anyways, that's how then the certification was developed in my relationship went more that way with them because they're like, how to teach. We have all these top athletes, but their base for teaching is pretty high. Do you think you could come in down here and
Mm-hmm.
kind of meet them somewhere? And I said, absolutely. Because once again, at the time, I think there was one other certification that existed, but they were telling people parkour is not flips, parkour is not a competition, parkour can't be done indoors,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and like their physical tests were, in my opinion, crazy for a coaching certification. Like you needed at the time, it was like shimmy across hanging from a bridge over a river in the UK. And I'm just like, that sounds cool. I'll go do that. But what the fuck does that have to do with people learning how to teach people parkour? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
fucking nowhere land. So once again, people were reaching out to WFPF being like, I want to open a gym. I want to build a park. This gymnastics gym will rent me space so we can do parkour. Um, and WFPF just kept saying, yeah, because like I said, the other qualification or peeps you're speaking on kept trying to tell all these people, no, we're not interested in you opening a gym. We don't want to help you. We're not interested in being a competition. We're actually saying parkour is anti-competition. Flips aren't parkour, or people come to us and be like, they want me to jump on wet rails for a level 2 teaching certification. And I go, yeah, don't do that. Like, as a coach, you should probably tell your students, just wait till it's not raining. You know, hey, it's wet, let's dry it. It shouldn't be,
Mm-hmm.
let's force you to do this. Like, what does that have to do with anything? Um, in my opinion, you know, so that's where WFPF was like, you know, just nodding their head to everything I was saying and being
Yeah.
like, yeah, let's do that. Because that sounds like what other people need, and these other, whatever you want to call them, uh, parkourists or traceurs or whatever the word they want to
I
be,
think
was
calling
really
like
not
a
helping it grow. And once again, I
mm-hmm.
came from skateboarding. So skateboarding to me, once again, when I started, I was just out in the streets. And then all of a sudden, Tony Hawk came around and there's a half pipe. And I remember watching the first one of that on the X Games and being like, what the fuck is that? That's skateboarding?
Mm-hmm.
And it was, you know, where a lot of street skaters were like, oh, Vert's lame, Vert's not skating. I'm like, that looks hella fun to me. And he's on a skateboard, you know. And then I did some research and I realized skateboarding also 10 years before was all in bowls, like
Yeah.
concrete pools. And I go, wait, that's pretty similar to this Vert thing. And then, you know, fast forward, you know, 10 years and there's Big Air, which is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, was huge for the X Games and huge for all skateboarding. So I kept looking at parkour as that, to where I go, there doesn't have to be this ceiling. You can go downhill skateboard if you want on your longboard. You can ride in your bowl. You can skate in the streets as a purist. You could go to a skate park. You could learn vert. You could do big
Mm-hmm.
air. I mean, what now? Like, what hasn't been done now with a skateboard? You know what I mean? Like, and I looked at parkour, like I said, in 2008 as that exactly, to where lots of these purists, people were trying to stunt all of that. And that's where I think WFPF saw what the actual community wanted, weren't against what the other people were for, but also weren't letting those people stunt everybody else's growth and actually
Mm-hmm.
making parkour for everyone. That's where they came up with that, you know, to be strong, to be useful. That's where they made the first "What is parkour" video that I've seen copied by a few other now federations, like almost verbatim and not giving the props, where that one showed where it came from, why it is, how it's going, all the right things. And then, you know, we also came to the, like we talked about, you know, with what I've always said, which is the sport came from the French military, and that was escape or evade, like your life's on the line. That sounds very much like the number one sport of life, which is survival. So, in my opinion, this is a sport. It is competition. If you don't want it to be, it doesn't have to be. You could just go, you know, just like basketball, you could go shoot hoops by yourself in your yard on your own hoop or go down to the park. But also, why stop the NBA from happening? Why stop, you know, other leagues from happening? You know, why
Mm-hmm.
say a dunk isn't basketball, it's only shooting? You know, like those things are all, I think, from since 2008, WFPF knew those were not the ceilings to be placed on this sport. I think they were the biggest, loudest, most positive voices for other types of parkour, and also
Mm-hmm.
uniting those and saying, you want to do that, that's fine. You want to do that, that's fine. We're down to do it all. Like if you watch the MTV show, just like you talked about, every episode was a different gameplay, because
Mm-hmm.
before that, parkour was, nobody did a competition and used the word parkour. WFPF was the first, and the first one that they did on the first episode of the season was speed. They did a pure parkour speed on a boat.
Mm-hmm.
Red Bull wasn't the first to be on a boat. And then the next one was a speed plus freestyle. So they did a hybrid to ease into the third one, which was just a freestyle. And they did it all very methodically, of being like, let's create the progression, let's create the evolution, let's ease into it for these that aren't quite yet ready. Let's give everybody their flowers, but also not stop anybody from being able to smell their flowers, you know? So that's why I've always been interested in WFPF. And I think that's also why I've always continued to be able to grow with them, to eventually, like a co-owner, develop a certification, develop competitions, um, first world parkour championship in the history of the sport, things like that. Sorry if that was like
Mm-hmm.
a rant or too much.
There's a couple things I think we can touch on. I mean, I think a good place to start is where I think the context that you brought up, there is like historically in parkour, I think a very strong purist movement that came from the original French practitioners that saw the spirit of parkour as like very integral to the practice.
Sure.
And it was a very inflexible, I mean, as inflexible because the goal was to preserve what they viewed as the only right way to do parkour. And I think that as the sport has matured, and you see this in any sport. I mean, if you look at like if you watch the Lords of Dogtown movie about the Z Boys,
Great
they were
movie.
like getting trashed on, right, for skating in bowls. I mean, like if you look at climbing, people
Yep.
went from mountaineering to like every sport has sort of like the cultural gatekeepers who are maybe more conservative that are trying to preserve what they think are the core values, and then they have people who are pushing it on the sort of progressive side trying to expand it. And you need
Sure.
both, right? Like you need people to ground
Yeah.
it in some value so that you don't lose the context of the practice, and then you need people obviously who are opening it and expanding access. And I think that especially in the context of the insurance, something that is worth pointing out that you talked about is WFPF, in my experience, was the first organization that really made a concerted effort to address what in America was a huge problem. And those were people who were trying to coach parkour at small gymnastics gyms in Iowa or Kentucky or wherever it is where, they didn't have outdoor spots. Their outdoor spot was a picnic table to try and, run classes at or something. But they did have a local gymnastics center. And I do think something that is slept on by a lot of people, and I do want to kind of dig into this a little bit more in a second, is
Sure.
how much WFPF did open the space and really actively tried to reach out to people who are in that position of, hey, you're coaching parkour at a gymnastics facility. Maybe you can't even call it parkour and you have to call it whatever, urban gymnastics or freestyle
Yep.
acrobatics or some other name. We're going to provide you with a pathway. I think that was fantastic because there are many people who I know personally that started coaching or even started learning in that and then decided, like, that gave them the option to decide if they wanted to take it to the streets or if they wanted to be a competitive athlete or whatever it was. Like, it opened the door for them. And I think a lot of people at the time when that happened, looking from outside of WFPF, maybe didn't appreciate how big a market there was of people that wanted to learn how to coach parkour that WFPF was tapping into. So that's I think like where we strongly agree, and I think that was something that still to this day probably flies under the radar in general, is how many people want more access to parkour education that don't want
Mhm.
to open a parkour gym or maybe can't financially. So I think that was great. Where I did want to kind of say, like, bring it back to David and Vic a little bit and just talk historically, is like WFPF, and I've experienced this on both sides, having probably like yourself been to a lot of events where you're kind of like an ambassador and you're trying to talk to a bunch of different people who are coming from different places in the community
Sure.
or have different experience. Uh,
Yeah.
I remember actively like just the weird vibe of when WFPF started, people going, well, it's two older guys who don't do parkour. How can they really represent the sport? And
Sure.
I think we strongly agree on this, that was a very naive and not
Yeah.
not a great
Dumb.
take on the sport. Like
Oh, just
there's
be honest. It was dumb. It was dumb.
well, I think it was a lot of people who, again, right, like it's a sport of a bunch of 20 to 24-year-olds. I think there were very few people in the sport at that time who were like over 30, and you're just not, yeah, your priorities when you're 20 are very different. You're not thinking about like career.
I
What do
mean, when they
people who maybe are
started though, when
older
they
than me have
started, they
to
had
add?
Ilabaka, they had Tim Sheaf, they had Oleg,
Yeah.
they had Ryan Doyle, they had a lot of 20-year-olds that were at the peak that were saying this is good. So
Yes.
also if you just look at any other sport, look at
Yeah.
any other sport. Look at who has made the NBA what it is. Look at who has made let's go into like the UFC what it is. All those dudes were just fighting in bars and now they've made hundreds of millionaires with fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all normally because somebody older, wiser who sees the potential in the youth, stands up for them, shows them pathways, creates things for them, helps guide them. Like,
Agreed.
so once
Yeah.
again, that's why I use the word dumb. Because I just think it is. Like, I just think it is. Because now
Short-sighted. Well,
they're
particularly because it
totally,
often
I
became
don't
such a
think,
personal
I think
attack. Yeah.
short-sighted's too polite.
That's fair. I guess like I think it was so the reason I bring that up is because I think from the
Yeah.
beginning people had a misconception about WFPF at a very like fundamental level, and then it
Okay.
often would, snowball because people would be coming into it with this preconceived idea that like maybe David
Yeah.
and Victor are in it for the wrong reasons. And then they're sort of
Maybe.
seeing motivations. Exactly. And I think that
But not
because of
go
that,
talk to Dave and Vic, instead create an echo chamber, or some people would just create mis and disinformation. 100%.
yeah, yeah, I think that I think there was a lot of miscommunication that happened. And I don't want to
Yeah.
kind of like re-arbit, especially as I wasn't there for a lot of these, a lot of things. I don't want to try and like,
Sure.
arbitrate any conversations. I just want to kind of create
Yeah,
this
that's fine.
context because I think WFPF's done a lot of really good things that go unrecognized. I mean, again, we talked about, David passing away last year, which was just a devastating surprise. And I had not chatted with him probably in 10 months and then heard about that through Victor and saw that. And, that came totally out of nowhere. I rarely hear about the work that David did for so many years with the parkour communities in North Africa and the Middle East, Afghanistan,
Yep.
Morocco. I mean, he was constantly trying to uplift athletes in parts of the world that are very underrepresented on the global stage. And there were a lot of
Yeah.
things that, as an athlete, when I was working day in and day out with David and Victor, I would see WFPF do, and I felt like didn't get any attention that were incredibly positive, like the,
Sure.
opening up coaching certifications to people who maybe didn't have access to them, like opening up pathways for viewership. I mean, I remember South America, there's a concerted effort to like bring South American athletes onto the YouTube channel, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so where do you feel like things are at now from your perspective? Like, do you feel like WFPF gets its flowers in the community at large? And if not, what do you feel like, where do you feel like the misconceptions happen? And you don't need to get into details or anything like that, but I'm just curious from your perspective, because obviously I was in it in the trenches having those conversations and seeing both sides for half a decade. And
Yeah.
I feel the frustration of you're seeing something in person and trying to communicate it. And because people
Yeah.
are hearing things and then not having that direct access, right? They're seeing it in a completely different way. And you're kind of like being pulled in these different directions. Do you feel like it's gotten better from your perspective in the last couple of years? Where do you think things are at?
Yeah. I don't know if it's gotten better. Yeah. I mean, it's tough because yeah, it's, if we're gonna talk like vaguely, it's tough. Because yeah, I mean, I think the evidence has shown who the, the culprits are, the tribals are, the small minds are, that purposefully go and push for their own personal kind of gains or control or power. Um, and that's, I think that it's just factual who some of these are and why they do it. Because like if we just back up to a second, you would say that there's these original purists, these ones about flips and control, but like David Bell would do flips. David Bell would be in movies. David Bell had no problem with these things, but he, in my opinion, which I've met him like twice, but the language isn't that great, was
Mm-hmm.
always a bit too like beholden to those people, in my opinion, where Sebastian Foucault did the opposite, in my opinion, which I
Mm-hmm.
think was the betterment for the sport.
I agree
And
with Seb. Yeah.
I think Dave and Vic were the first ones to actually talk to everybody and say a lot of you guys are saying all the same stuff. Why just because if somebody thinks this way about it, does that mean they're not parkour? Why can't it be like, here's what we have in
Mm-hmm.
common, and here's eventually how it comes another way, and here's maybe how it also connects. So I think once again the big misconception is short-sightedness would be the way, I guess. I think it's a bit more about um, egomaniacs that want kind of everything, and or want to just tear other people's things down if they don't see how it directly benefits their thing. Um, so that's more how I see it, because I've seen a lot of the players. I've been around for 20 years in the sports governance, the not sports governance, the film, the not
Hmm.
film. Like, I've certified 1,400 people across the globe. So for some to say like our certification, you know, when certain then new federations come up and say, hey, your certification, let us put our stamp on it and we'll recognize it. It's like, well, I'd certified 600 people before, no, 1,000 people before your federation came into existence. Why don't you just recognize it? You know, um, if we also look at it from the sports world, first competition, before WFPF, parkour, there was no sports. They would come up with art of motion. They came up with the adrenaline games. They came up with the Barclay
Hmm.
cards. None of those would use the word parkour. WFPF was the first to do that. So let's just start right there with what WFPF really helped bring to this sport. And that also still to this day is the biggest Google spike for the word search parkour, is the MTV show, because of them. So I think they've done amazing things. And everybody that I know that won't even give those kind of credits to, I have to put them in that other box, like I said, of an egomaniac, or just there's something deeper that I don't get. And I've talked to a lot of these people to be like, why are you continuously spreading this negativity? And they got nothing to say. They just run away from it. So
Well,
once
yeah.
again, if it's
Let me
Dave and
ask you a
Vic or
question.
old,
Yeah.
well, let's also, yeah,
Hmm.
but hold it just for a sec. Let's also go to, it's been 20 years with the WFPF doing their thing. What have they done with the wrong intentions? There's nothing. So when you say these people have this, why do they still have it? I couldn't tell you. It's been 20 years. And I know some people say, oh, they did a deal with FIG. It was an MOU that led to nothing. And in the scheme of things, it led a lot. It's FIG recognizing the International Parkour Federation's existence, which that federation was established before FIG attempted to even say that they were in the parkour, sports sphere at all. So that MOU did great things for the sport. And it did great things to protect it from an outside entity coming in, such as FIG. So it's people not under, it's just like you said. Well, I think they might have the wrong intentions. They might have this. Everybody I go back to who still keeps that, they have nothing to say. They have no, oh yeah, they did this thing, and that's why I think that. It was always this fear of like, well, they're just older guys and they might be doing it for the wrong intentions. But like, once again, point out, but it's been 20 years, point something out that was actually bad. Like a good example, we developed that certification. Now people can teach freestyle parkour. It all starts with speed parkour, by the way, levels 1 through 3 in the student band system. Which, yes, we were the first to have a student band system as well. I know somebody else just dropped this breakthrough band system. We had a 10 band system 15 years ago. The first levels are all basics in parkour. We were the first to come up with events. So there's wall, vault, floor, drop, bars. We also included trampoline. So many people, why do you include trampoline? Trampoline's not parkour. It's not this, it's not that. I go, well, I learned 90% of my air awareness on the trampoline in my backyard. So that's a very useful tool, in my opinion. If you're going to learn outside parkour, you should get a trampoline in your backyard. So that's
Hmm.
where I came from with that, where a lot of people thought we came from gymnastics. I didn't step on a gymnastics trampoline until I was 20. I had a trampoline in my backyard since I was in middle school. So I
Hmm.
right away was like, me and my friends who trained parkour would also train on the trampoline. Hence, we have better air awareness than 99% of the people who don't train on trampoline. So it's a good tool. And we're, like I said, the first ones to do this. We're the first ones to go into a gymnastics facility and say, we could teach parkour here, but what we're going to do is explain how this is good for how this thing in gymnastics works and how it's good,
Hmm.
but how it does not cross over to parkour.
Hmm.
Um, So you now understand, here's the pros of a spring floor. Here's how it works. Here's an awesome tool. Here's this technique, though. Don't take it out the cement without expecting to potentially get injured, highly potentially injured, you know? So we were the first to kind of show, hey, I see why you think these are similar, but let's explain why they're not in the scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a lot of people leave out with our parkour certification. It was always pitched to the insurance and partnered with the insurance companies that people could teach indoors and outdoors. I believe to this day we might still be the only ones who do that. I could be wrong, but it allows a parkour gym to buy the insurance, and they can also be covered to go outside with their students. So our certification always did include our competitions, our certifications, our equipment, everything always included the purest
Mm-hmm.
principles. It always had all that, but then it also expanded and opened it for other things. So I think that's one thing people never really speak to or think of. I think the other thing, once again, is people creating echo chambers. They get a group, they make it private, and then they spread the disinformation. And I don't know why. That's why they feel
Mm-hmm.
that's good for the sport. In my opinion, it's not at all good for the sport. Um, do I think WFPF is the end all be all for the sport? I absolutely do not. Do I think other competitions have great formats that we don't necessarily do? Absolutely. They got pros and cons. Ours has pros and cons. I think what WFPF has always done very well is help provide opportunities that anybody can participate in, help show a professional, safe, progressive format, um, and have always had inclusion of kids, adults, males, females, all countries. Like when we did Turkey, the first World Parkour
Mm-hmm.
Championship, they weren't going to let any females participate. And we fought and we got one who was down to come in Turkey, like who was brave enough to come. And we were like, well, if she's brave enough to come, we're brave enough to protect her and let her do it. And she did. She ran the speed with all the men. And that was the first time in that part of the world that a female had been in one of their competitions. And she got the biggest applause, the
Mm-hmm.
biggest congratulations, everything like that for doing it. Once again, that was because of WFPF and IPF. Also, WF and IPF, first ever all female division for at a free running competition that also had female judges. They've always been inclusive. They've always been, how do we get more? How do we show people, the foundation of where it came from, its roots, and also how do we let it grow uh,
Mm-hmm.
in the organic way that things grow? So from my perspective, it's hard for me to understand why anybody, just like you're saying, has anything anymore to say except for their own personal gain. They're worried about losing their peace or their tribe or whatnot.
Mm. Yeah. That I appreciate you outlining all that stuff, and I do think that I think it's interesting. So, and I do want to ask you about the competition. I know I'm running a little
Sure.
bit short on time soon, and we'll jump into the USA Parkour Cup because that's coming up.
Yeah.
But
Let's do it.
I did want to touch on two things. So the first thing I did want to say is just because I don't want this to be unclear, since I know actively there's a lot of confusion around FIG as a whole and who has been
Sure.
involved in what way. So
Yeah.
IPF, you mentioned the MOU, which was basically a non-binding agree memorandum of understanding between IPF and FIG, where they each recognize each other's individual entities with the potential to explore opportunities to work together in the future. There's no binding situation where IPF and FIG are connected. I want to point that out because I've seen multiple
Hmm.
things over the last 5 to 10 years where people are like WFPF and FIG or IPF and FIG. And I was involved in that stages. That was sort of the end of my involvement with WFPF, but I actively do remember Victor and David forming IPF because they saw the potential for a Fig-esque takeover happening pre
Yeah.
it actually happening. So I did want to
Hmm.
just say that and make sure that that didn't get glossed over or misrepresented. The
Yep.
other thing that I think is really great, and this is where I think I'm gonna highlight something that you said that I think is really beautiful, and maybe put in like my 2 cents of media communication suggestions that I've
Sure.
mentioned in the past. So I think one thing that you said that's really great is that WFPF has, and this is true to my personal experience as well. always been focused on inclusivity and creating parkour as a sort of accessible way. I
Yeah.
think that what you said about multiple multiple modalities existing, right? It's this rocket ship and you don't want to capture it. You're just saying like WFPF's representing one way to practice it, one way to teach it, one way to coach it. And as you said with the competitions, right? It's not necessarily the only way. It's not necessarily the best way. It's the way that you think is the best way for the people who are participating inside this umbrella and this community that you've built. That I think is a message that can resonate with a lot of people. I think sometimes this is maybe like the communications aspect, because unfortunately for many years there were so many misunderstandings and often
Mhm.
personal attacks, especially against David and Victor in the early days from people.
Yeah.
I think that sometimes that message doesn't always come across. And what
Sure.
often
Sure.
comes across, not, I'm going to rephrase that, not often. What can occasionally come across is people who don't know it don't see the posts that are the like, we want to create this space. And if you want to train
Sure.
it another way, that's great too. That's also parkour. And they maybe only see the reaction post that's like a little bit more in the line of, those guys are assholes. We don't like what they're doing. And that I think is just something that like USA Parkour Cup has done a really good job of leaning into. I think a lot of the communication stuff's done a good job of leaning into, and people may not always get from the algorithm and from their experience of WFPF. Because I know that when I wasn't attending those events as often and I wasn't seeing that media as often, the things I would
Yeah.
see was whatever, annual like viral tumble up misunderstanding communications shitstorm would happen, and then you don't
Yeah.
see like the 90% of the other things, and so you're like, oh, maybe it's X instead of Y. That's where I
Sure.
just wanted to kind of not push back again, but provide context for someone who's not in the ecosystem. You use the word echo chamber, which I think is a great phrase for every, like, parkour has tons of little communities, and then those are
Yeah.
siloed even more by our algorithm. And so I think sometimes it can be intentional, and I think sometimes it can just be a result of like, I have these 5 friends who post a lot, and the algorithm gives me that, and then because of that I slowly get these silos, so I only see whatever the most, the hottest, spiciest take of the day is.
Yeah.
And I did want to highlight what you said there, because there are some things that I think I find really inspiring. Again, like we've talked about, and from when we talk, like I don't really think I would include trampoline in a parkour certification. That's okay that WFPF does. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's great to have options. I also don't think I would
We
ask
could
somebody
talk
to run
about
a
that.
5K under 25 minutes, like, which is, I know what some other certifications have, like physical
Do they
requirements like
really?
that I don't find to be
Oh my
relevant
God.
to a coach. So that all of that is to say, right? Like, because of your personal experience and what you found to be so helpful for you as a coach and an athlete, you might have things that I don't really see as being as valuable. Somebody else, like, the message that I'm hearing from you is more that like you want the opportunities to exist. I don't want to put those words in your mouth, but I did want to highlight what I heard you say, which was just the sort
Yeah.
of creating the options for people to choose their own path. Would you say that that is an accurate representation of how you feel about kind of like parkour in general?
Uh, yeah. I mean,
Or
yeah,
I
I
guess
think that's a good way. I
maybe
mean,
even a better question is WFPF's role in parkour, because those are similar but
well, I
different.
think WFPF's role in parkour has always been to create positive opportunities for athletes to expand or grow. So if it's
Mm-hmm.
certifications that are actually backed by insurance, you could just do it. So now you're covered. 'Cause once again, we live in America. So the other qualification that was before us was made in a country that has has taxpayer funded healthcare. So they didn't have to think about that stuff. Another one, like we talked about the trampoline, 90% of parkour gyms even have a trampoline in it. So that's what's so
Mm-hmm.
funny that they're like, well, why is that part of your certification? Well, it's there. We're going to insure it. It's also a useful tool. It's, in my opinion, it's the same reason a bar is there. It's the same reason a vault's there. It's a useful tool for the sport. Is it in our competitions? No, it's a tool. It's not. a competition event. But we also see trampolines in the wild. It's not like some gymnastics only thing, which I think a lot of people, for me, I think if just people just did a bit more research and not just taking everybody's word, and I think that's what's held back the sport a lot is people do get into, like you said, these private chats or these algorithms, and they hear something and they just assume it's the gospel, but they don't ever ask, oh yeah, why is that? Like a good one, like you said, why was IPF started? Well, we heard Fig might make a move. So IPF, I got the notes up. IPF, uh, the bylaws were created by IPF, is officially first international parkour federation. That was 2013 to get
Mm-hmm.
ahead of that. So gymnastics didn't come in. So when you got things like, other federations that came around post FIG saying they are the official, why didn't they have you know, why didn't they have the ability to see it coming? It's because, once again, Dave and Vic were good for the sport. They were good for everybody. And I think 20 years, if you look back, you can't disprove that. So I think what they do instead is create false narratives. The other thing, like that we talked about in that about the like exclusivity. Once again, we reached out to certain people at Parkour Generations to see how we could work together. They didn't want to. They instead went into their private chats and told everybody, don't let WFPF come over here to the UK, to Europe, because they'll create a monopoly. That's what they kept telling people. And we're like, why don't you let us in these private chats we hear about? Because we heard you're telling people we're going to create a monopoly. And they were like, no, no, we didn't say that. Cool, let us in these private chats. They wouldn't let us in. So whose word are we supposed to take? And the whole time that they're telling the average practitioner, don't do WFPS, they're going to create a monopoly, the average practitioner is not asking them, wait, but if you guys are the only one, aren't you a monopoly? Like, why? The average practitioner should just ask more questions, in my opinion, to anybody and just be like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, so if you're telling us don't let them in, you're the only path, you're the only one, that's a monopoly. And we saw that happen with like Parkour UK. They got all this government money to help the sport. I I'll tell you what, if IPF was ever guaranteed that kind of money per year, you'd see where it went. You'd see what it'd go to. You'd feel it in the sport and in the streets. It took them how long to finally start allowing competition? It took them how long to, they didn't even create a certification with the money. Instead, they said, okay, Parkour Generations, you're now the cert, and you're the only cert. So once again, they created a monopoly again and raise the price and then close the doors to everybody else. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's, in my opinion, it's just the free runners that are part of these echo chambers, private group chats, whatever word you want to use. They should just be asking these people in that, well, wait, why don't you want us to have other options or opportunities? Why are you saying you're the only one for us? Why not allow others and let us decide, let us take other paths, feel it out, and then see what's right for us? Why why is the head of Parkour Earth background all gymnastics? Eugene's all gymnastics, no parkour. Why is Dave and Vic bad for the sport as older parkour practitioners, but Eugene, who's only from gymnastics and UK governance, uh,
Mm-hmm.
that guy's good for the sport. It's just, why don't just ask the people in your echo chambers or private group chats or members only clubs, just ask those questions and see maybe what those answers are. Because I have a feeling if most free runners actually just ask questions to these people, they'd learn pretty quick that these people aren't giving them the best advice for them and for the sport. It's more the best advice for the people at the top to eventually
Hmm.
close everybody else's doors and make their doors the only way.
Yeah, I mean, I have plenty of issues with how I think Parkour UK and Adapt and some stuff are handled, and I do think it's gotten a lot better in the last couple of years. I don't know a lot of the details that you're talking about in your personal experiences with them, and I don't want to
Yeah,
dig too deeply into that.
we don't got to dig too deep, but that all of
I
that's
do
factual.
agree. Yeah, well, I do know that there was quite a bit of issue in the UK scene in general with how,
Mm-hmm.
for a little bit, Adapt was handling what essentially did become a monopoly on certification, and I know that it has gotten
100%.
better since then, but I don't know where things are going, or what it seems like Parkour UK is moving in quite a different direction now, which I hope is true, and I like what they're doing content wise, and so I will say that it seems like they've significantly improved.
That's good.
But yeah, I did appreciate you sharing that part of your perspective on that, and I do want to give you the chance also really quick to talk about the USA Parkour Cup, which is coming
Yeah, dude,
up.
let's do it.
So why don't we just really, and I'm sorry, I keep saying really quick because I have to go get my daughter in about 15 minutes, but let's
Yeah, sorry
I
about
want to
that.
be
Thank you
very curious. No,
for
you're good.
doing this.
I wanted, and my goal for this was like you said, because often people end up in these echo chambers, and I do think that to be fair, like WFPF having been in it also is an echo chamber as well, not in the sense of people actively trying to silence voices, but I think it's just
Mhm.
that all of those communities tend to sort of self-regulate and funnel, and like I don't think there's, I don't mean echo chamber in a negative sense, but it's just like a lot of the
Yeah,
people show up to the similar events, and then that's who you kind of hear and talk to. So
yeah.
what are you looking forward to about USA Parkour Cup this year? What do you think is going to be improved on that's coming up this year from the past years? So what are you stoked on? What's improving?
Yeah, yeah. So for me, we're on the ninth annual USA
Hmm.
Parkour Cup. Before that, it was the Jump Off, which was an international. So it's been going for 11 years, and every year we get the feedback from those who participate, past and present, and we try to grow together. We also do take outside information, so I that's why I say I don't think we're an echo chamber. Anybody can offer anything, and we also don't, say what other people do is wrong. We just say they're doing their thing. If you like it, do it. If you like ours, do it. If you like them both, do it. If you don't like one, don't do it. So I think that's the difference between us and when I say an echo chamber.
Gotcha.
Nowhere
Hmm.
is it you have to do ours and we bash anybody else's.
It's not
I
exclusionary. Yeah.
it's not exclusionary and there's no disinformation being spread to keep you working with us. You either like what we do and you have fun and you pay and you do it, or you don't, and it's not a big deal. So the big things that we're doing, yeah, we always do speed and freestyle. This year we're going to add skills. We haven't been able to in the last 5 years because we moved to a new event space and just time and scheduling never worked. So we're going to have our first skills comp in 5 years, which is going to be sick. Um, for us, we're going to do it slightly different. So I'm sure there's going to be people who say this is, the worst. And then some people are going to say this is dope. But I'd be curious to see who copies some of the stuff in the future. So like an idea of what we're doing is I took a lot of like feedback from those since I hadn't been around it in 5 years.
Hmm.
I took a lot of feedback from people who do it at other comps, listen to the pros and the cons from each person, and then also thought, how could we do it with what we have? So the big one was everybody's waiting in lines, and it's like they spend $50 and they spend 2.5 hours pretty much in lines. So we
Hmm.
found ways to cut that down. We found a new gameplay of blocks of number one, all 8 events are going to be open the whole time block. And we're going to split them into groups, the athletes, so they'll have less lines.
Hmm.
We're also going to allow things like warm up time on the course when they're not being judged.
Hmm.
So their first attempts at things aren't under the gun or the clock per se. So that'll hopefully alleviate safety. Because one thing for us too, our insurance company wasn't stoked on skills being insured because they're like, wait, you're going to push these people to do things they might not be able to do, and we're like, yeah. And just so you know, for us with our competitions, we always say it's the athlete versus the course. We always say, here's the speed course, you're going to start here and you're going to end here. Here's how we recommend you do it. If you can't do it this way, you can go this way. And we generally make a slower route and a faster route. We don't tell them you have to do XYZ. We don't say you
Hmm.
have to jump from here to there. We make it towards like, well, if you can't do that, just go down and climb up. And we just know it'll be slower. We do things like that, but we never say you have to do this or else. And it's the same
Hmm.
with us in freestyle. We say, here's our skill list. It's everything's got point value. Do whatever you want to do on this list. And the points will accumulate this way. Once again, we never say you have to do these skills. So that was what
Mm-hmm.
the insurance company was nervous about, but we finally got through that. The big thing that we're doing that's really cool is we're working with Finn Evans, Finn Creates,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to give all the athletes, this isn't it, this was the mock-up,
Oh,
so
cool.
if they
Yeah.
screenshot it, it's not going to do anything, but we basically made a treasure map of all the events. They'll be broken down and color coordinated throughout the gym on all 4 floors. This is not the official one, so don't screenshot this and be prepared because it won't work. And then the back side of the treasure map is going to be broken down, color coordinated, the challenges at each event.
That's cool.
So every athlete's going to have that, and they're going to be able to go to each event and they just check off the challenge when they do it. So for us, like, everybody seems super excited about this, and we're really excited to like introduce it for the first time at the skills.
Yeah, I'm excited that you guys are doing skill. That's the blocks. I don't know how you're planning on doing it, and I won't ask you to get too into it in case anybody's listening and
Yeah,
trying to
it's
get an
fine.
advantage. But I do think that
They
cutting
won't get an
down
advantage. It's okay.
perfect. Well, for both the viewer and the participant, skill has always been my favorite event to participate in. But
Oh yeah.
the fact that you're struggling to either cut in front of people the whole time and kind of be a jerk, or that you wait to for your turn and then somebody might just snake you at any given moment and get in front of you. Like, it's
Oh
almost
yeah.
like a balance between egotism and like you have to be a little bit egotistical to get yourself enough attempts quickly enough to do well, and
Hmm.
then you also have to be really good. So I think any option where you're cutting down on wait time and sort of organizing people into a structure a little bit more
Yeah.
efficiently seems like a significant improvement. And I
Yeah, I
love a
think the
good
goal
treasure
for us
map.
is to keep the speed aspect. And in my opinion, that's what
Hmm.
separates it from a competition to just,
A
kind of
jam.
training with your friends. Because when we were at
Yeah.
the gym, we'd all be in our groups and being like, "What are you working on? Oh, can I do it?" And then you're like, "Oh, what are they working on?" Like, I think the under the gun time kind of thing is gonna make it
Hmm.
feel more like a sport. And then those who just want, like you said, to take it more as a training sesh with those people, like going and playing basketball with LeBron James on the court during the NBA games, they
Hmm.
can do that. And then those who are
Yeah.
there playing to win, they can do it. So I think the idea is to eliminate as much judge interference and as much waiting kind of interference. So, like I said, we'll have all 8 events open. Luckily, Intrepid Parkour is this, perfect gym.
Hmm.
I designed it like 9 years ago, and every year we build something newer and cooler still without adding anything new. So just love that place. And the idea is we're gonna have like 60 participants. We're gonna do the walk and talk, and then split them into 3 groups, and each group gets 30 minutes. So the first
Hmm.
group gets 10 minutes to warm up, and then they do it. They go off. The next group gets 10 minutes to warm up. They do it, and we're gonna go with that kind of way. So it's not big numbers on the course at once, and then it's not, you know 2.5 hours. That's a crazy amount of time to ask people to be, in my opinion, on the course, still thinking of competing. A crowd to sit and watch, like, what's going on.
Hmm.
Is it over there? Is it over there? Yeah, stuff like that. So
Yeah.
we're
When
gonna
it's like
try to.
heats in a street skating comp or something like that, and you just got 3 or 4 heats and everybody's got 10 or
Yeah,
15 minutes on the course. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So that's how we're approaching that one, and then I'm really stoked to see how it plays out. And then if I could share my screen, I think you'd be stoked to see our speed course.
Yeah.
Let's
We can
see.
cut this in post in case it asks
No,
me
no,
to give you
you could share it.
permissions.
You could share it. It's not a big deal now.
Oh, no, I can cut straight into your screen in post too. Oh, nice.
Oh, sick.
The
So this is going to be our longest one in 5 years. It's going to be the
Okay.
dueling. Um, it's not moving exactly right. I think it's just because I'm also on this call with you. But athletes are
Yeah.
going to start here. We're going to have crowd on this side and participants on this side. And they're going to start on the ground level, go all the way up to the 4th floor on the outside, and then come back down the middle side by side. And they start with a crawl, cut to the outside. We got some obstacles that they have to work their way to then wall climb
Hmm.
to get to the 2nd floor. From the 2nd floor, we're going to have, there's some things that aren't shown in here just so there's going to be some surprises. But once again,
Hmm.
they go over, they get up to the 3rd floor. From the 3rd floor, they're going to use the bars to get up to the 4th floor where they touch, and now they're side by side as they bomb it all the way back. Down to the 3rd, hit the slide
Are they
in the
allowed
middle.
to rail stride, unlike in FIG competitions?
Well, we could get into FIG comps
From
and
an insurance perspective.
how much Charles hated me the one time me and him met at a FIG meeting. It was about parkour equipment and competition safety. And I really made him feel uncomfortable. And
but the athletes in this comp are going to be allowed to use the tops of the bars. Okay, cool.
Well, for us, just so you know, I always try to design a course where everybody can participate. And I like to think of the top 90 will finish the course. Or sorry, the bottom 90 will finish the course. The top 10 will beat everybody else significantly. So there'll be a big difference between the top 10 and the other 90. But the 1% should be able to smoke anybody in the 10%. So with this one, the idea, the one that'll separate, for my opinion, the 1% in the 10% will be those that need, after running this course all the way up in the last third, the ones who can use the rails to connect to the green are gonna stride above all the others who have to go all the way to the ground. So I worked on this course with Eric Coriolis. He's the one that really helped me piece it together. He's gonna be the one who builds it, and we crafted, like I said, one that I want everybody to show up and say, I can't wait to run this, but I want the top 10% to put on a show, and then the top 1% to really show that the other 9% all right, I need to work on some things. So endurance is going to be one, rail precision is going to be another, heights is going to be another, side by side, literally these dudes and gals are going to be next to each other also, which I think is going to be sick, is that pressure of don't pay attention to them, what am I doing, so I am super stoked for this one.
Awesome. And then for the listener, would you mind just dropping the dates, the location, and what special guests you guys have coming out?
Yeah, it's going to be March 6th, 7th, and 8th at Intrepid Parkour in Cedar Park, Texas. We do a speed day, and then we do...
That's outside Austin, right?
Yep, just right outside. Austin? Yep, right near it. Yeah. So huge, great community out there. And it's speed on Saturday, and then freestyle and skills on Sunday. Jams every night, and downtime and stuff like that for everybody to train together. We always start off Friday night with just an open jam and early check-in, so people get to mingle and stuff, but it's not just right into a competition. So Eric Coriolis is going to be there as the course director. And then Sam Wiseman's showing up for freestyle and speed. He was pretty much podiums in both. I don't think he actually podiumed in speed, but he was really close, and he podiumed in freestyle. Jacob Jeweler's going to be back. He's the first ever double champion. So last year he won speed and freestyle. So he's coming back, which is sick. It's the first time we've ever had somebody coming back to defend both. And then Ben, Parkour Penguins, coming back. He was the speed champion 2 years ago, so him and Jacob are going to battle. Evan Storm's coming out. He's podiumed in speed and freestyle in the past, so he's coming back for speed, freestyle, and skills, so that should be super sick. Steezy, Stephen McCarty, is the baller out of Texas as well, so I think this will be the 9th time. So.
Yeah, did I see a Verky name drop in the guest list for as a potential guest, or am I just making that up?
No. Special guests. We got George PK. He's always coming
George
out.
McGowan. Yep.
I can't get back to where I'm seeing you. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. I'll just make hard eye contact.
There we go. The eye contact pulled me back in. So George PK's always come out since post-COVID. I brought him out, and then we've done 24 jobs together ever since. I think that's just the coolest. If I could just take somebody's powers, as a free runner, I think I would take his. If I could just move, it just
many of us would take his spring. Yeah.
Just that's one question I'm gonna ask you later, or not. We'll do that another time. But that was
we can hit a take two. Yeah, for sure.
If you could download one free runner's abilities, who would it be? Like that, I think he's mine. Um, we were like, not Ellis, and I'm like, but just how George does it, it looks so
Hmm.
ah. Um, but yeah, George PK, Fletch Flips are going to be the special guests, so they're just
Oh,
VIPs.
cool.
They're not competing or anything. But they will be coming out and joining us, which is super sick. And then, yeah, I'm flaking, but there's going to be tons. We normally have about
Yeah,
500 participants. It's a big
that's
weekend, a big
awesome.
family event. Uh, knocking on wood, last year we had no serious injuries. I think we had one partially rolled ankle. That was it. So knocking on wood that we do that again. Because as we like push the course and push, it's for us, it's also just keep it safe and keep it,
Hmm.
we don't want anybody, you know, limping for the rest of their life or something. So yeah, no, I'm really excited for it.
Agreed. Well, Robbie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all that and sharing your story in parkour. Like we said, talking, I know you and I know a lot about WFPF, but there are probably a lot of folks on here who maybe hadn't heard your story. And I think it's good for them to get a chance to hear it firsthand and
Yeah.
yeah, get to hear about the event that's coming up and all the other stuff that WFPF has been up to for the last many, many years. So thanks again for taking the
Yeah.
time to come on. It's always fun and a little bit weird to relive your past when it's 10 or 15 years removed. And yeah, just getting to chat with Robbie about some of those early WFPF stories. It's always like a reminder of how fun that time was and also kind of how I've grown and matured since then and the different directions that my life has taken. What I really hope you got out of this and what I wanted to go into this conversation with when Robbie had reached out to me about being on the Takeoff is I benefited greatly from getting to have these types of conversations early on with David and Victor when WFPF was starting out and seeing that they were genuinely in it because they really liked the athletes and they thought that the sport could help young people. And I wanted for you guys to get to hear Robbie's story in his own words because I think a lot of times it's easy for people who are maybe like I know a lot of my listeners in a section of the community that doesn't always engage as much with the sort of WFPF adjacent community to put faces and actual personalities to the names. In the internet, it's obviously always so easy to, I guess, draw caricatures of people or organizations. And it's always nice and harder to understand people in their own words. But I think that's the most effective way to understand people. And I think that was my goal for you guys today was to get to know Robbie a little bit more, hear his story, hear how he talks about parkour and hear the parts that you agree with, the parts you disagree with, and form your own judgments and just, yeah, get to know him a little bit better. Thank you as always for listening. Excited for next week's episode. We've got Marcio Philippe talking about his fall and recovery from his injury in Portugal. I think that is going to be a really powerful episode for those of you who are listening. So I hope you tune in next week. I hope you enjoyed this week. As always, I will see you next time. Thank you.